So, good evening, everybody. I'm Betty Cohen. I'm the Senior Advisor for Industry Programs here at the Paley Center for Media. And I am super delighted to be welcoming all of you to this evening's Paley Dialogue, Getting the Jump on Mobile Advertising, a conversation with Carolyn Everson, Kristin Patrick, and Andrew Robertson. We're really excited to be hosting this event tonight at this particular moment in time when the opportunities for mobile advertising are still just beginning their explosive growth. One of the most watched digital reports of the year, I'm sure you journalists all follow it, Mary Meeker's Internet Trends, recently reported that in 2008, Americans spent 20 minutes a day on average on the mobile web. This year, they're spending close to 3 hours a day, more time than they spend on laptops. True for most of you? Yeah. Currently, mobile commands 24% of time spent with media, but accounts for only 8% of ad dollars. Meeker therefore estimated that the mobile ad industry is still short $25 billion. And if that's not an indicator of enormous upside opportunity, I don't know what is. It makes me wish I'd majored in mobile advertising. So I did, huh? So we're thrilled and we're grateful to have Carolyn, Kristin, and Andrew with us tonight, all major players in the relatively nascent mobile advertising ecosystem, representing different parts, selling, buying, the challenges of creating effective advertising for not just a new platform, but ultimately a whole new medium of expression in the media landscape. As with anything new, there's bound to be lots of questions. What forms of mobile advertising are already proving to work better than others? How will advances in mobile's ability to target viewers in granular ways affect brand marketers' expectations for and spending on the advertising in more traditional platforms? And who is doing the best and the worst job of engaging consumers without annoying the heck out of them by being too intrusive? The answers to these questions and more are coming up here tonight. But before we get underway, I'd like to recognize two Paley trustees with us tonight, Jeff Sands, who's here. Where are you, Jeff? There you are. And Scott Kernett. We also want to extend our sincerest thanks to McKinsey, our long-term and valued knowledge partner for these Paley Dialogues. And I'd also like to welcome all of our Paley Media Council members. Those of you who aren't yet members, let me fill you in. The Media Council is our exclusive, invitation-only membership community, and it's comprised of some of the top executives in our industry. It is, I hope you've gathered this by now tonight, a very good networking forum, the ultimate networking forum, and also people tend to say that if there's one place where you need to go in order to make that time to really stay on top of all the changes in our industry, the Paley Media Council programs are the place to be. If you're not yet a member, but you're interested in applying, please see me at the end of this session. We will have the bar open and would love to meet with all of you. And for our members, please get out your calendars. If you're already a member, you're going to want to reserve your seats early for the incredible fall lineup we already have. And here's just a few examples. On November 12th, mark your calendar, Paley and McCann will co-present a special program about diverse representations on television and the lessons that brands can learn. And this will feature Emmy Award-winning actress Viola Davis, Paul Lee, president of ABC Entertainment, Eileen Shaken, showrunner of Empire and creator of The L Word, and Maria Elena Salinas of Univision will be moderating. On December 3rd, our Paley Dialogue Breakfast will feature a very timely conversation with Jeff Zucker, president of CNN. And he's going to be talking on what it's taking to evolve the CNN brand and how that is actually affecting coverage for the 2016 elections. On the morning of December 9th, Paley and CUNY Graduate School of Journalism are going to be hosting the next big thing in journalism, Follow the Data, with a special keynote from the new editor of The Guardian in the US, Lee Glendinning. And last but not least, I want to remind all of you about the November 18th to 20th, where we will be hosting our annual major Paley International Council Summit. And some people have referred to it as the Davos of Media. This year's event is probably going to be our best one yet. We kick off with the keynote by James Murdoch, and we'll follow with an all-star lineup. There's a flyer on your seats that will give you more information. Register today and act quickly as tickets are selling quickly. And for those of you who spend any time on the West Coast, just a reminder that your Media Council membership is bi-coastal, and we have some exciting programs that are coming up that we're going to be hosting in LA. Again, mark your calendars, there's more information to come. A conversation with Peter Roth, President and Chief Content Officer of Warner Brothers Television, and he'll be up there with Greg Berlanti, the executive producer of Arrow, The Flash, Supergirl, and Blind Spot. That's all happening on November 19th. Then December 17th, a conversation with David Nevins, president of Showtime. And then all the way, we're already planning into 2016, a conversation with Gary Newman and Dana Walden, co-chairman and CEOs of Fox TV Group. And that'll be happening on January 28th, 2016. So now I'd like to introduce our esteemed moderator, Peter Lattman, Deputy Business Editor of the New York Times, and Peter's going to be introducing the rest of our panel. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and enjoy the discussion, and do stick around afterwards because there's more chances to meet people and drink and have fun and talk about what you just learned. Or not, just have fun, all right? Peter.
I think so, yeah. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm going to introduce the panel, and we'll get right to it. So to my immediate right, I have Carolyn Everson, who is the Vice President of Global Marketing Solutions at Facebook. Carolyn told us before the event that she schlepped all the way out to New Jersey to watch her twin daughter's tennis match. One won, one lost.
Yes.
Before heading back to New York City for this panel. So heroic mothering efforts out of Carolyn tonight.
Guilty working mother syndrome, but that's okay.
I think it's a heroic panel effort, actually. I think the mothering bit's easy. This is the heroic.
That's right, exactly. And then we have Andrew Robertson, the President and CEO of BBDO Worldwide. And then we have Kristin Stewart, who has the most complicated title, Senior Vice President, Global Brand Development of PepsiCo.
Kristin Patrick.
Oh. Why did I say Kristin Stewart?
I think Dr. Freud could answer that one for you.
Yeah. Kristin Patrick, my apologies. Okay, so Carolyn, last week when we were talking in preparation for this panel, I said, oh, we're going to be discussing tonight the shift to mobile. And you cut me off and you scolded me and you said, we are already there. We haven't shifted to mobile. And then I thought back, and in July of this year, in the New York Times, we ran a fairly breathless headline for my taste. Said, Facebook is erasing doubts on mobile. And then the lead was even more breathless than that. It said, if Facebook were a car, it just went from 0 to 60 in 6 seconds. I did not edit that story. Anyway, the point was that about a year ago, you had 0 revenues for mobile. And now, what percentage of your revenues is for mobile?
About 76%.
Which is just, it's jaw-dropping. I mean, I sort of can't get over that. So just talk to us about that transformation and what that's been like.
Well, for Facebook, we had to become a mobile company, or we probably would have been in a very different competitive situation. And it actually started right as we were going public, which is not the best time to go through a very challenging time in a company's history. But what we saw very clearly from our dashboards were that more consumers were joining Facebook on their mobile device, not in places like you would suspect, like India and Indonesia and Japan, but actually in Western Europe and the United States. And that necessitated a very significant wake-up call, because we had been pursuing mobile, but we actually really weren't a mobile-first company. And we had to do 2 things, I would say, if I had to summarize it. The first was Mark led an all-hands, which he typically does on a quarterly basis, and showed the data and explained what we had to do. And then he made the bold decision that we had to basically scrap our entire consumer strategy that we had been following up to that point. We had made a bet on HTML5, which would scale. Our app was terrible at that time, so I apologize to anyone that was using it. And we had to actually build native iOS and Android apps. That meant retraining every engineer and really pivoting the company very, very quickly. And then on the monetization, we had nothing to offer, right? We had nothing to offer BBDO, nothing to offer Kristin. And in order for Kristin to achieve her objectives at PepsiCo, as well as the other 2.5 million marketers that depend on us, we had to actually have an ad product that worked in the mobile environment. And so we thus made the shift both on the consumer side and the business side, and now it's, as I said, it's about 3/4 of our revenue.
And that's just a couple of years in the making. I mean, you've been in the business for
bit
couple
longer.
of decades. Yeah. And would you say what's gone on over the past 2 years? I mean, this is what, 11 years old, something like that. I think. No. This is actually
Not
only
even
7
that.
or 8 years
Yes.
old. I think Facebook's
Yes.
11 years
Yes,
old.
we are
Yeah.
11.
Right. So just the transformation that has gone on in the past couple of years that Carolyn has talked about, is that the most dramatic thing that's happened in your business in terms
Yeah.
of a shift?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you take Randall Stevenson, client of ours, CEO of AT&T, 2 years ago was talking to all of his officers. And he made the point that when he took over as CEO of AT&T, MySpace had just overtaken Google as the most visited website on the planet. The 3 biggest selling devices in their stores at the time were Nokia, Palm, and BlackBerry. There were no apps. There were no apps, and
Right.
Apple was a $19 billion computer company. That was 6 years. So if you then say, okay, that's a lot.
Right.
What's it look like in 6 years' time? The truth is nobody really knows. But what seemed like and has turned out to be a reasonable bet is that all of the screens in all of our lives will be wireless, including the big one on the wall. All of them will be dumb. Nothing will be stored on them. Everything will be accessed as it's needed. And they will all be connected to each other, all the ones that matter to us, which will dramatically change the way we market to people, because we will have the ability, because of the extraordinary data that you can collect and connect from all of those screens, to target more precisely and meaningfully. So not only can I get to the right people, but I can get to people that I've defined in a more meaningful way. Not 18 to 25-year-old men, but
Right.
People who'd most recently bought eggs. We'll be able to reach them in the right context, and there's leverage in that. Right time, right place, right frame of mind. There's probably another 10x of leverage in that.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have better information to inform our messaging strategy, and we're going to need ever better creative, because the one thing that is certain in all of this is that people are going to see more.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if it's 2,000 messages we see a day today or 5,000. It's a lot, and it's going to increase. And on top of all of that, a lot of it, most of it, is going to be video.
Yeah.
When things go mobile, people do 3 times as much of it. When they go video, they do another 2 times as much.
Yeah, I'd like to get to video in a little bit. Just at the New York Times, just so everyone's aware, we've reached a tipping point too, where more than half of our traffic comes from mobile phones versus desktop. So we've reached that transition too, and we're all focused on how to maximize and create a good mobile product. You mentioned MySpace,
Yeah.
so that's something that jumped out at me. And I read another headline today on the internet that was called "The Decay of Twitter" on The Atlantic, and it said, it was an article about how people are losing interest in Twitter, and this will make you somewhat happy. I think it said Instagram is the only social network people actually still love to use. It didn't talk about Facebook, but it talked about Instagram, which is of course part of Facebook. Now, MySpace, of course, was the new thing at some point, and it disappeared. There was another piece I read about Snapchat having interesting advertising but not good metrics yet. How do you think about, Kristin, in your job? You have to look at all these platforms, which everyone has moved to, and everything's shifting in terms of their popularity. So that leaves you in kind of a tough position.
Things are changing so rapidly. So one of the things that I think that's been keeping us awake at night is how we transition and find exactly where we want to put our messaging. And I think that Andrew's right. It's about the right message at the right time. You can get really streamlined in terms of who you're targeting. And things are, when you said MySpace, I forgot about MySpace and what they stood for back 3-4 years ago even. So things are just moving at a much more rapid pace than they ever have. For us, it's about consistency in messaging, being true to what the brand stands for. In this environment, creative and excellent content is the most important thing that we can put out there. So we spend a lot of time thinking about targeting our messaging and making sure that what we're saying is something that people aren't going to click through or that they're going to pay attention to. It makes mine and Andrew's job even that much more of an art form, I would say, because creative is still king in our opinion.
But what's exciting? What's worked for you recently?
I would say that the World Cup campaign that we did recently was really solid. It was a very creative concept where we combined football, art, music, and it was very true to our brand. I think that, you know, finding our place culturally and targeting that message is when we win, because again, it's content that consumers are interested in, and that stuff gets passed around. I think that the Pepsi Max stuff that we did, because it had a little bit of an edge and a sense of humor, does really well in places like Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Now, Facebook and Instagram, these are your two children, so to speak, right? And you're not going to say which one you like more, just like your twins, I'm sure.
I'm not.
But talk about how these guys might think differently about the two platforms, how you think about the two platforms, and maybe how consumers think about the two platforms when they're digesting information and then obviously advertisements.
So starting at the broad level there, you know, Andrew said there was no apps 6 or 7 years ago. There's now 3.1 million apps in iOS and the Google Play Store. However, 50% of consumers spend half of their time with just one app a day, and 75% of their time is with just 4 apps. So out of the 3.1 million apps, it is highly, highly concentrated. Facebook and Instagram are two of the most important mobile ad platforms out there. One, because of its scale. You know, Facebook's now at just about 1.5 billion people, or 1 billion people a day. That's scale, which is important, but what's really more important is you can actually target and get the right audiences. And Instagram now is at 400 million, growing faster than Facebook did, by the way, at its same trajectory. And now we're taking all of the Facebook targeting and we brought it to Instagram. So for marketers, the way we talk about both platforms, Facebook is very much around your personal connections. So on Facebook, you are connected to people you know, or friends of friends. You're connected to brands that you might be enjoying, or nonprofits and causes, but there's a personal connection. On Instagram, a good percentage of people follow other content that they don't even know the people. Why? Because they are going to Instagram for more visual inspiration. So the use cases are a little bit different, actually quite different. At the highest level, though, you've got both with tremendous scale, both with tremendous targeting capabilities. What we are seeing marketers do is a lot of interplay in between the two. So for example, if you are a brand that wants to deliver a visual message and do a video or even a photo, you might start that on Instagram. We can then figure out the people that have actually interacted with that unit, retarget them on Facebook, and bring them, quote, down the proverbial funnel, or vice versa. We can also do sequential storytelling between the two platforms and across device. And so if for example, if Kristin wanted to put a message out in the morning, and then see who actually responded to that message, and then reinforce to remind people of something later in the day, and then something in the evening, because we have identity, we can map people to different cross-device messaging. So lots of interplay between the two, and also how they work with the broader media ecosystem. I mean, we're not here to say everything's got to revolve around Facebook and Instagram.
Of course.
They are, you know, tremendous ways for people to increase reach, particularly with millennials and multicultural audiences. So TV plus Facebook and Instagram is a way that I'm seeing a lot of marketers use us.
Right. So last night we had Sunday Night Football and Major League Baseball World Series. 40 million people watched those two games combined. 23 million people watched football, 17 million baseball. Andrew here at Brit says he's not a big fan of baseball. Had a bad experience at Yankee Stadium in 2001. But you were nodding, and when she was talking about the various ways in which marketers can use Facebook and Instagram, and then she also noted the use of television as well. So how are you advising your clients on this very, very tricky balance?
Well, I think if you combine what Carolyn said and what Kristin was saying about finding ways to tell brand stories across multiple platforms, that's the way you have to think, because the reality of it is, I suspect last night was a very big night on Facebook as well, and that there were an awful lot of people who were on Facebook talking about the Mets and all the football that was going on. Right. And when you talk about the switch to mobile, it isn't a switch, it's an ad. If you look at the data, there's 7 hours of content being consumed in 5 hours now. And the reason for that is that there's 2 hours of found time. Some of it is when people are sitting watching the football and the baseball and are simultaneously on mobile devices. And some of it is minutes that are found at other times in the day where you simply couldn't do any, in the past, you couldn't do anything else with those time. So it's not that television is being killed. Television is not being killed. Television audiences are the same as they were in general. Individual cohorts, you'll see movement. But this is an added medium through which we can tell more interesting brand stories across platforms.
Andrew, can you give a successful brand story in utilizing Facebook, Instagram, or any platform for that matter on mobile?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful about thinking of it as mobile. Because what we're really talking about, 75% of all the mobile advertising is Facebook and Google. So what you're really talking about is a couple of really good apps.
I think that's worth pausing. So 75% of all the ad revenue right now on mobile is 2 companies.
I'm right, about right?
It's pretty close to that, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have an antitrust story for
No, because the significance is
but it's also
not
the top 4 apps is where consumers 75% of their time. So it's highly
That's where they're
concentrated
going.
consumer time, which means highly concentrated place for ads,
Right.
which is not the little things that are annoying that are popping up on your
Correct.
mobile phone where you can't tell a brand story. I think that's what you're trying
That's
to say.
exactly the point. Yeah, and in particular, as more of it becomes video, that's going to become more true. The other thing which is interesting is that there's something magical about 70%. 70% of all the minutes on mobile devices are in-home. So the point about mobile is not that I can go anywhere, it's that it's always with me, which is what changes the nature of the relationship. And that's why it can be added to other media experiences and still be highly personalized.
Right. I mean, we all have the experience watching Game 3 on Friday night with my family. My 3 middle schoolers, we're all watching it, but the 3 of them are watching their phones. Now, the merits of my parenting aside, like that's just what happens now, right?
Yes.
So I don't know, Kristin, at Pepsi, I mean, let's talk about, video advertising, right? That's one of the fastest segments of digital advertising on mobile. And what's working for you there, and how are you building that out? Because obviously, looking out over the next 10 years, that has to be your primary area of focus, if not at least one of them.
It's interesting because, just to echo what Andrew was saying, we think about our communication strategy in terms of transmedia storytelling, right? So mobile's a piece of that, a very important piece, and a very becoming an even more important piece. But whatever we do has to, first of all, emulate the core of the brand message, and then we carefully plot out all the areas that we put this message out. So television is still really important, still the most effective way to reach a mass audience. So we'll have a television spot to support our message. We will definitely have a very well thought out plan for our social media. And that goes across multiple areas. And we still, in some ways, do print. In terms of video advertising, we're talking about content more and more at our company. Mm-hmm. And the piece that's getting really interesting to us is the analytics and being able to really understand what's happening and what consumers are clicking on, and making us that much smarter about what we're doing.
Yeah. I want to get to that, and we've talked a lot about that. Again, today I read something. Snapchat's ad business is growing, but still lacks metrics. Okay, and you and I talked a lot about this. There's that ultimate cliche in the advertising business. Half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. I just don't know which half. I was told that that's Wanamaker's quote, and coincidentally enough, Facebook is in the old Wanamaker building on Broadway,
Correct.
So is that quote or that cliche that we all have heard, is that no longer applicable in a mobile advertising world because you can measure everything?
So, we've taken a very strong point of view. Andrew is part of our Global Client Council, and which I started when I first got to Facebook. So it was a little over 4.5 years ago. And one of the first things the council said, it's composed of CMOs and agency CEOs. They said, you have got to take the doubt out of whether or not Facebook ads work. Like, no matter what you do, like, you have to prove this. And so we then went to the industry and said, it's not good enough for us to tell you if they work. You have to come up with measurement that you believe in, that's vetted by all of your researchers and actually gets put into your media mix modeling to determine whether or not whatever you're doing with Facebook and now with Instagram is actually working. We want to be held accountable for every single dollar people spend. I tell clients every single day, do not give us a single dollar. Not a single. Stop spending if you need to until you are sure we are driving business results. Because we believe so much that we have to be focused on business outcomes and driving value for our clients. I don't hear a lot of other people saying that in the industry, but we believe that to the core. And we believe it to the core because A, it is measurable. You can measure certainly brand metrics, but increasingly so we are able to measure offline sales. We're certainly able to measure online sales. With Atlas, our investment, which is basically an ad serving and measurement system, we're able to do cross-device measurement.
And that's a business you bought a couple of years ago
we bought
from
it from
Microsoft?
Microsoft. We completely started over because the code wasn't where it needed to be, and we built it to be mobile-centric, based around people, because cookies, which has been the measurement that people have used, and we've all used it for the last 10, 15 years, cookies don't work on mobile. And they wildly overestimate reach and wildly underestimate frequency. And so from our point of view, we want to be held accountable, and brands should only be making investments. And I think we find, really the real telltale for us is small businesses, right? Because small businesses, we have 2.5 million advertisers on Facebook right now. Many of them are small businesses, and they know, is the cash register ringing, our customers walking into the door? It's very, very measurable. And so we're laser focused on that.
And notwithstanding your membership on that fancy council, do you buy that?
Totally. No, I mean, look, I think the important thing that's happening now is the work is being done to focus on the right metrics. I mean, Wanamaker had his line. There was another one of I think it was Terence Beckett, who said, we're in danger of attaching greatest importance to the things that we can measure most easily, thus ensuring we're precisely wrong rather than roughly right. And I think what's happened is the focus is the extra work that has been required to get to the right metrics has been done or is being done. And I think it's a great thing because it enables us and our clients to double down on the things that are working best and generate much, much better returns than was previously the case.
Yeah.
And know that we are.
And presumably we're only in the nascent stages of this, and it's only going to get better and better.
I think it is going to get better and better, yeah.
You said to me something, you're not only trying to get an impression, but make an impression, or
right.
something along those lines.
Yeah, you can buy impressions. Making
Right.
them's harder.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I wanted to talk about mobile games, which is such a big component of mobile traffic, and so many people spend so much time on games. Pepsi is such a big advertiser of sports, live sporting events, which we've discussed. Do you kind of view mobile games in sort of a similar vein? Is this something that's like a natural fit for Pepsi's brand?
Interesting. Yes and no. We haven't done a lot with mobile games, I guess. We do a lot with sweepstakes and the ability to win things, particularly around our music platform. And we do a lot of online contests and things like that. So if that's what's considered games, yes. But we haven't done a ton with like digital gaming.
Yeah, and as far as games goes, there's some skepticism around Facebook and how much of the advertising on Facebook relates to the apps for the games that you can download. What's your response to that? That's gotten a lot of attention.
There's definitely a misconception about how much of our ad revenue is being driven by mobile app installs. And all I can tell you is the reports that are out there are incorrect. Gaming overall is an important business, but it's not just about mobile app installs, right? And if you 3.1 million apps, a lot of companies do want to download and get people to consume their apps. The bigger area we're seeing is actually app re-engagement. Because what happens right now is people come in, they spend a lot of money because of, a venture investor will say you need to have X number of users of your app that have downloaded it. They invest the money to get their apps downloaded, but think about all your phones right now. If I were to ask you to all take out your phones, you're gonna have a lot of apps that you probably haven't visited very much. On average, consumers use about 27 apps a month, but remember the stat, four a day, 75% of the time. So we're seeing a lot of companies now realize that their investment in mobile app installs is shifting to mobile app re-engagement, which is simply to remind people why they downloaded the app in the first place and get people to use it more often.
So that's like a second level advertisement from these apps.
It is, but gaming
and you don't
companies
consider it downloadable, right?
No, it's not downloads, but gaming companies are actually argue some of our most sophisticated advertisers. They know metrics like by the millisecond. They know exactly what they're doing, and what we're seeing is this, there used to be this distinction between doing brand work and direct response work. Well, that's completely going away, because within the same environment, you can have a quote, what we would have called the traditional brand message for a game, and then they can see whether or not there's people of interest. They could serve them up a mobile app ad and then start to re-engage them very, very quickly. So the funnel is collapsing. The time in which you can set up a brand and a DR message is totally collapsing. And actually a lot of the gaming companies are doing what we would have traditionally in the business called brand work, even though a ton of their day-to-day is quote, direct response.
Andrew, other than Pepsi, who are some marketers that are really getting this right, that are doing some great work in the mobile ad space?
Of ours?
Yeah, clients.
I think we've been doing some really great work on some of our Mars brands. Like if I take Snickers, coming back to Kristin's point earlier on, if you can define your brand story, your brand idea very clearly, then you have the ability to execute that story in a way that's relevant for all the different platforms out there. So, "You're not you when you're hungry" is a very simple, crisp definition of an idea. It exists on television at Super Bowl and other times in the year. On Tinder, we just did a really neat campaign where we put up a whole load of profiles of really unsavory, unpleasant characters, and when people swiped on them, it would respond, "You make bad decisions when you're hungry. Grab a Snickers." And on Google, we found out what the 10,000 most frequently misspelt words are in the search bar. And the 250,000 versions of those 10,000 miswords, and then bought those as search terms for nothing, because nobody else wants to buy misspelt words. And then when you misspelt the word business or something, it would say, "You don't spell right when you're hungry. Grab a Snickers." And then we had some great Halloween stuff running on Facebook last week. So it's an example of how, if you have a really tightly defined idea, you can create work that is contextually relevant and valuable for consumers, which is what you really need to do. You have to create value for consumers.
One of the pieces, one of my favorite work that BBDO did was with Canadian Tire, which I know it's a retailer, so think of them like the size of a Walmart in the US, but in Canada. And since we're coming up on Black Friday, there's obviously a tremendous amount of interest about consumers being on mobile. So Canadian Tire's CMO asked Andrew's team, he said, "I'm going to take 100 products, 50 I want BBDO to create short videos, put them in Facebook newsfeed, and 50 products are going to get absolutely no promotion, and let's see what the lift is." And it was incredibly successful. Last Black Friday, they drove a 57% increase in the 50 products that had this support, and then they repeated on Boxing Day at a 69% increase. That's what we love. Like, we love it because it was customized video for mobile, which meant shorter form, capture people within those first 3 seconds. We call it the 3-second audition. Didn't require sound, because a lot of people consume advertising on mobile without sound. So it had all these best practices, and it was measurable and actually drove sales. Like, that's a really great case study.
That's really cool. And are a lot of companies doing this like A/B testing thing where they?
Yes.
That is so interesting.
Very much so, because you can get data because of the scale. You can get data back within seconds. I mean, we have e-commerce companies that put thousands of ads into our system on a daily basis and are optimizing literally by the millisecond. That's how sophisticated they are.
And there's no sound with videos. You all might know this. I didn't realize this, but I guess with television ads, you said that the only companies that really focused on maximizing the visual impact of an ad without the sound were beer companies, because people typically watch sports in bars oftentimes with the sound off, so they needed to make them visually appealing. But I guess with mobile, where so many people watch ads without the sound on, it's a much broader proposition to make those ads visually appealing without the sound.
Yes, it's a completely, the light bulbs go off when you say to people, have you thought about the consumer case of not having sound on initially? And most haven't, right? That's not in a lot of creative briefs. What happens in sort of second 1 to 3 to create what we call thumb-stopping creative, because you go through your feed and with your thumb. And so those are considerations, and yet what Kristin and Andrew said earlier couldn't even be more true. Actually, the burden of responsibility on better creativity is higher than it has ever been. One of the reasons, and look, we obviously, one of the things that we care deeply about is when consumers pull up Facebook or Instagram, we want it to be the very best experience it can be. Is it perfect all the time? Absolutely not. The ads really need to be as relevant and engaging or useful as possible. And that's the vision, right? That the ads are as good, if not better, than the content you receive from your family and friends.
And I have to tell you, I'm going to shock you now.
Uh-oh.
No. It pays you to do it. So Facebook's auction system is called a Vickery Clark Rhodes auction system, correct?
Yes. I'm very impressed. He listens to the council meetings.
Where the Vickery Clark Rhodes is a type
British
of auction
origins?
system. It's not, no.
That sounds it.
And the significance of it, and there are like a gazillion impression bids possible a second. So somehow Facebook has to decide whose ad to serve to you right now. The value that is attached to your bid is affected by the likelihood that you will achieve your stated objective and the quality of the experience for the user. So the higher the quality of the experience for user, the less you have to pay to have your ad served to that individual. So there's not just earned media here. There's saved media if you create valuable content.
Wow, Kristin, when we met earlier, you said you live in Los Angeles, but you lead a very peripatetic existence, traveling all over the world. And obviously, we haven't touched yet on the global nature of this, and that's really a huge driver of mobile advertising is the global opportunity, whether it's India, China, South Korea. So, Pepsi, how is it thinking about India, for instance, or China, or the opportunities there away from the United States?
Interestingly, it's very difficult. One of the things that we are thinking about is creating global content from the center that can be shared across the world. And obviously in India, there's a whole set of issues that go on there, as well as China, there's a different set of players there. So one of the things that we're finding, and this is just, I think this just speaks to a natural human truth, key and core themes play out very well around the world. So right now we're working on our 2016 campaign, and one of the things that we were talking about is, okay, we're going to create and build some stories from the center, and okay, well, how is this going to work in China? They all have to sort of have something that appeals to every human in the world. And I know that sounds overly simplistic, but it's true. This year, we did something for World Emoji Day. And it was something that we found in Shanghai. This guy actually proposed to a woman using emoji cards. And it said, like, will you marry me? And it was this universal language, and literally the content was shared by everybody around the world. And because it was just something like, I didn't need to speak the language, I didn't need to be from that culture, but I understood what it meant. So kind of getting back to, I think, core themes in terms of what we're doing.
That's neat. Before we get to questions, just one quick thing. Ad blockers is such a hot topic. And rather than get into sort of ad blockers and how effective they are, one of the conversations that we had earlier was just, what ad blockers say about the broader sort of mobile advertising space and how these ads can often be really irritating. So what do ad blockers tell you in terms of what you should be delivering to customers?
I'll start from a Facebook perspective. Ad blocking as it currently exists does not work in mobile apps. However, what ad blocking is trying to do is actually, in our opinion, is give consumers more control over what they're experiencing. And so on our platform, at any given time you get served an ad, you can click on it, you can determine why you receive that ad. You can click out and say, I don't want to receive an ad anymore from that advertiser. You'll understand what the targeting is. And so what we aim to do is to actually, A, make the ads more valuable, per Andrew, right? That's very much built into our auction system. And B, give the consumers control. That's our answer to it. We think that that's essentially what the ad blocking sort of sphere is trying to do, is actually give consumers more control. And we actually do believe the entire ecosystem needs to have better ads. Consumers' time, your time and attention are the two most valuable assets that people have to give you, right? Be it on your platform or to see your message. Consumers deserve those messages to be as valuable and relevant as possible.
Yeah, and both of you have spoken about an obsession with quality and just getting it better and better, because it is, like you said, there's room for improvement.
There's a massive room for improvement, and if you start from the premise that what you really want to do is sell something, which is what I do start from, you're not going to annoy people into buying stuff. So it is literally biting the hand that feeds you to keep serving up irritating garbage to people who would rather use their time for something else.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't happen, because it does, and it happens a lot. I think that one of the other good things that is going to emerge from this world that we're moving into, where we're able to see instantly how people are responding to the work that we're serving them, is that it'll be very Darwinian.
Right.
The bad stuff will die and the good stuff will fly. And that, I think, is a good thing.
Great. I think we have time for some questions from the audience. So raise your hand, and there's a mic in the back. Sir?
Carolyn, can I ask you for a moment to put ads aside? 3 to 5 years from now, what will Facebook's role be in the distribution of what we now call programming?
Great question. I think right now we are playing a very big role in the distribution of news content. For many news companies, we are the #1 provider, actually, of either traffic to their site or actually new people consuming their content. And so we view ourselves as a distribution platform, both with Facebook and Instagram. And then over time, you'll see us in 3 to 5 years roll out more with messaging, both with Facebook Messenger and with WhatsApp. We do see content formats changing a lot over the next 3 to 5 years. We are already starting to see 360 video appearing in people's news feed, which is sort of an immersive experience. 3 to 5 years, you'll start to see some virtual reality and even more immersive experiences happen. And so our role right now with content companies and certainly news companies, entertainment companies, is to be a major distribution platform. And now most major studios will launch their films on both Facebook and Instagram. The fall lineup for television was on Facebook.
Play the films?
Nope,
Or
advertise.
Now, what's your role in the 1-hour drama? When do you start programming the 1-hour drama?
We have no plans to start programming 1-hour dramas on Facebook.
It's too expensive. Why would they do that when they get all their content for free?
That's a good point.
Thanks, Andrew. Andrew will answer for me.
But if they have the money to buy the rights, right?
One of the things I think of in terms of an opportunity for mobile, obviously, is the idea that it knows exactly where you are at all times. And you walk by a Starbucks and it serves you up. Wouldn't a Frappuccino be great right now? Do you see that happening at scale?
Is there a term of art for that? I think there is, like geo-target. Oh.
Geotargeting,
Yeah.
you got it. There you go.
So the example of the Starbucks, I smile because I remember like 10 years ago being on a panel and talking about the Starbucks example. You're going to walk by and you're going to get zapped with an ad and it's going to be perfect. And that is going to happen. There is no doubt there's going to be more geo-specific advertising that is available across these mobile devices. However, I think the part that we all missed, I certainly missed it, was the importance of these mobile devices being a branding mechanism. Because when you have millions of people's attention daily, you have no choice if you're building a brand to actually be where people are. And so while there's the whiz-bang local example of the Starbucks, I would argue it's equally important for Starbucks or any other marketer to think about this medium where consumers are spending so much time as an important branding platform in addition to the whiz-bang local.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that, and I think there will be some excellent opportunities for some brands, but if your mobile turns into the equivalent of your mailbox stuffed with flyers, only they're shoved at you one at a time, they're not going to be very effective.
Carolyn, when the book is written, this move from the upside down L on the web to mobile will be maybe one of the greatest transformations in advertising. And I know we were all scared to death and said, oh my God, mobile is not a place where we can actually do advertising. It now seems, I think, it's working better, and it's like one of those lucky things for all of us, is that mobile is actually better. The small screen that forces the linear program ad program model versus I'll never look at the upside down L. We're going to see other transformations in the next 10 and 20 years that are as dramatic as this. What's the process that you guys went through inside? How did you get comfortable that said, oh my God, we're not going to die? Because I'm sure there were people inside saying, oh my God, we're going to die. Mobile's going to kill us. Can you talk about the transformation and the process that you guys did in this miraculous move to mobile and what happened inside?
Well, I think what I would say, and I will share more details in a moment, but I think the thing, and that's why Peter opened up with, I said, no, the shift is not happening. The shift has happened. And I think for every business to be rethinking what it means for consumers to have the most personal device with them at all times. If you were starting a bank today, you would likely start it in a mobile app. If you were starting a retail environment of selling stuff, you'd likely think about it from a mobile app perspective. And so I would argue every education, healthcare, I could go on and on, every vertical is being disrupted and has new opportunities. PepsiCo is working with us very closely on e-commerce and how are you going to change the way consumers actually buy their products. And so there's challenges across every industry. I think the way, there was some cultural things that I think took place at Facebook to allow us to get through this transition. First is Mark. Mark is, I would argue, going to be one of the greatest business leaders to go down in our generation. But when he did the all hands and described what the sort of existential threat was to the company if we didn't make this transition, right after that all hands, a group of engineers went into his conference room and gave a product. They were ready to give a product demo of something we were about to launch, and they showed up with desktop mock-ups. And he was like, did you not hear what I just said? And he was like, you go back, leave, and come back when you actually have what this is going to look like in the mobile environment. That story literally spread like wildfire because you don't want to show up in front of Mark for a review and not be thinking what he has just asked the company to rethink. And so a very strong cultural message from the top. I've seen this in the marketing and advertising world. I have seen CMOs say to both their creative agencies and their teams, don't come in and show me the beautiful 30-second. That can be part of it. Show me first what it's going to look like on a mobile phone. When you have top global CMOs telling people that they're only going to review creative on a mobile screen, that sends a message. So that cultural message from the top was very, very critical. By the way, we're doing it again. We just announced a week ago that starting on Tuesday, so tomorrow, we are going to, employees at Facebook will experience what it's like to be on a 2G network, which is 1,000 times slower than we're all probably running around if we're on, an AT&T or whatever. So tomorrow, we're all going to experience what it's like to be in a village in India or in Kenya or South Africa or in Indonesia, and how painful it is. Why? Because we need to have the empathy. If we don't have the empathy of what it's like to use, you asked about global, the next billion users are coming on in really slow connectivity, often with feature phones. And we can't live in a technology Menlo Park world where we think everything works super fast. So creating a culture of empathy, dog fooding, we call it dog fooding our own products, those are some of the cultural things that I think we do. And what I try to do, I don't go out and sell Facebook and Instagram. I mean, yes, I have, I'm in charge of a big chunk of the revenue, but that's not what I do. What I actually try to do mostly is help companies think about how to make this transition, how to think about what's happening to their industry, because every industry is being disrupted, and what are some of the cultural things you can do to send messages to say we can't operate the same way we used to. So those are some of the things that we did.
I watched Mark on stage last month talk about virtual reality, totally head spinning.
Yes.
And a year from now, we'll probably be here talking about advertising and virtual reality. I assume that's something you all are thinking about already. Any more questions? Oh, sure. Why not here, and then we'll go. Okay.
Hi, guys. Carolyn just about answered this question, but Andrew, it's for you. Back in the day a little bit, I had one of the great privileges of working with David Lubars when he was at Fallon, and I was at Rolling Stone on one of the great Rolling Stone campaigns. And given what Carolyn just said about the CMO edict to inspire the creative community to think mobile first, how do you manage that from your perch with the creative community? Everyone wants to be on the Super Bowl, for a 120-second spot perhaps. And does it impact who you look to hire? And how do you inspire both sides of that creative aspect?
It has more to do with how you lead than who you look to hire, because in our experiences, people who are capable of creating great stories are capable of creating great stories in all sorts of forms. And if you tell them you've got $10,000 and 8 seconds to do it in, they'll do something really brilliant in $10,000 in 8 seconds. The leadership part of it is very important, and that is sort of things like Carolyn was referring to about how you expect to see work when it's presented to you. It's about other things as well. David, for 2 days, ran Charlie Chaplin movies on all of the monitors in the agency, and nobody knew what the hell they were seeing Charlie Chaplin movies.
That was true.
It was true, yeah. And then he sent a note round saying, you're probably wondering why we've been showing Charlie Chaplin. Most 56% of all mobile ads are viewed with the sound off. We need to learn from Charlie Chaplin how to create really powerful, emotive, silent advertising. So things like that, which just show the signal to everybody what it is that you're looking for and how things need to work differently. I think is the biggest part of it. Inherently creative people are inherently creative.
Last question.
Given what Carolyn said about people using only 4 apps a day, I guess my question for Andrew is there a whole new industry that it's about to emerge of helping apps market themselves?
So it's not that they only use 4, it's that 70% of their time is on 4. They'll use many more, but if you, and they're using them for different things. So, checking your stock price is something that you can do in a nanosecond. Watching Carolyn's daughter kick a goal that she didn't quite hit yesterday afternoon, that takes a bit more time.
But is there an industry for you that's a whole new set of
I don't think there is in getting people to use those apps, because I think that the best apps are designed in such a way that they create their own magnetism. So the experience of using them is so valuable or not that people will give their time or not. And some of them can be incredibly valuable in short periods of time. Some of them can be incredibly valuable in long periods of time. For us as advertisers, we're more interested in the things that people are going to spend more time on. But I think it, if you have to work hard to get somebody to go back to an app, there's probably something wrong with it.
I have to ask one more question, because you said you're going to spend time on things that people spend their time on. So what about messaging apps, right? I mean, I spend all my time messaging my wife and kids, and you've got WhatsApp and WeChat and Kakao and all this stuff. So are we advertising on messaging apps? And if we're not, why not?
Because Carolyn hasn't opened it up yet, but I think it's only a question of time before we're able to do that on WhatsApp. And I mean, you can already do some pretty good e-commerce stuff directly off the messaging apps. And yeah, of course we're going to be there.
Right. Well, thank you so much for a great discussion, Carolyn Everson, Andrew Robertson, and Kristin Patrick.
Thank you.